950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, the Matt McNeil Show. Nice to have you with us today. 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. A man I have talked to many, many times. I haven't talked to him recently, though. John Crippen is kind enough to join us. My friend, John Crippen, who is the executive director of the Hennepin History Museum. Kind enough today to talk about what things are going on over there, plus a water blessing ceremony, a second annual one that's coming up here in a few days. John, thank you very much. I appreciate the time, my friend. Oh, you're muted, I think. I think you're muted. There you are. And can we hear you there? Maybe.
There we go.
There we are. There it is. There.
Wow. Like 4+ years after pandemic, and we're still doing that. I think you're muted.
I think what would be great is if you came in as a cat. You know, that would yes, that's the interview I want to do there. Let's start off. Of course, Hennepin History Museum. I'm talking about all the things around you. I was talking about the Open Eye Theater across the highway from you guys, basically.
Awesome.
You of course are right there next to the MIA in South Minneapolis. Talk about what's been going on over there.
We're doing a lot of great stuff. This summer we opened an exhibit called Circle of Water, Puppetry as an Agent of Change. And we got a few years ago a collection from In the Heart of the Beast Theater centered around their Circle of Water circus 40 years ago, in 1983. They started up at Brainerd and went down the Mississippi River to New Orleans talking about environmentalism, water advocacy, and what have you. And they did it Huck Finn style. They'd go into town, do a little parade through town saying, tonight there's a circus, and they put on a show. And so we've created an immersive, I like to call it a puppet forest. You walk into the gallery and you're surrounded by these beautiful puppets talking about the history of the Mississippi River and water quality. So
well, and once again, and you and I have talked in the past, someone had the smarts to put those puppets aside and save them so that, because, you know, at times when we're living through history, we don't realize it is history, but thankfully they did, and now they are on display over there.
Yeah, Sandy Spieler, longtime artistic director at Heart of the Beast. It was interesting to watch the mashup of Puppet World and Museum World. She said early on, you can't put these in cases. Like, they need to be alive. We're like, well, yeah, but you can't mess with them. She's like, they need to be alive. So she worked with us for about 6 weeks to create these magical installations that they do come alive.
How long is that? How long is that?
It's going to be up for another year and a half. We thought we went to a big time and expense. We want to keep this in the community for as long as we can. So we've got time, but don't take too much time. The other things going on exhibit-wise, we've got an exhibit about the Tibetan American community in Minnesota.
Yep.
Second largest Tibetan community in the United States. So we're telling their story with them. They're telling their story here with us. And next weekend, October 19th, we're opening an exhibit on the Pioneer Soldier Cemetery, which is at Cedar and Lake in South Minneapolis, and highlighting the stories of long forgotten, sometimes, residents of Minneapolis that were just unsung heroes or regular community members living their lives, but we're elevating some of their stories.
Okay, so and it's interesting you brought that up because I do enjoy talking history with you. Was Cedar Lake? I mean, I drove past that cemetery all the time when I was going to school, and I was on Lake Street, and you'd see it down there. And how old is that cemetery? Does it go back to the beginnings of the city?
It goes back to late 19th century. One of the early homesteaders that came in after the treaties were signed in 51. I think they came to the property in 52 or 3, and early on somebody said, hey, I don't have any place to bury my son. Can I bury my son? And they said, sure. And sooner rather than later, they said, yeah, we're not going to try to do a farm. Let's just make our property a cemetery. So it was, a lot of the territorial people, early Minnesotans, were buried there. There are about 22,000 graves in this cemetery, most of them unmarked.
Really?
It also was, in those 19th century parlance, it was the pauper cemetery for Minneapolis. People would just get buried there if there was nowhere else to go. It also was a haven in the 19th century for people who'd committed suicide because you couldn't get buried in a religious graveyard, in a church graveyard. if you committed suicide, so they'd come here.
Because, I mean, there had to have been somewhere downtown in that area a cemetery at some point with the very early people. I mean, was there ever one, or is it always down out of the city?
It's always out of the city.
Wow.
The big one, of course, is Lakewood, where the rich and famous are buried. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of the two on either end of Lake Street.
And I think what's fascinating about that is this is one of those cemeteries that is, you are going back in time. You are literally able to peel the layers of the onion of the citizens of the city as they came on in. And, has someone done the research, try to figure out who's in some of those unmarked graves, or is that lost in?
Sue Hunter Ware is the hero of this story. She's been, as a volunteer for decades, been doing this research. Mm-hmm. And so we connected with her a year or two ago and said, hey, what do you think? And she's like, oh my gosh, I'm ready. So she's been doing the research, and we also have a magazine issue coming out at the end of this month, and our editor has done a long-form interview with Sue. She's fascinating, and she's one of these really cool people that I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but like, she talks to dead people. She sees dead people. Like, she knows these people like her friends. Like, she's just into the research.
I will say it is we are in Halloween, the spookiest month of the year, and as delivered, the Hennepin History Museum is giving you something, kind of spooky, but much more, informative by having this. And it opens on the 19th, right?
Yeah, I have to admit, it wasn't an accident that we chose October to open this exhibit.
I'm going to let you know, my birthday is October 19th, so I'm taking this as this is a shot against me. I'm going to I know what you're up to, John. Actually,
I didn't know that, but happy birthday early.
Yes, come talk about a cemetery. Speaking of getting old, Matt.
Yeah.
But that sounds like a fun. That sounds like for us. But it sounds like a fun cemetery.
I mean, cemetery geeks, they're willing to say this is fun. I mean, because you get to know people in a different sort of way. It's yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'm presuming as well, some of the gravestones out there, I mean, there were some ornate ones that were put out at the time. Are there? Did you see any of those in there? Are there any really cool ones?
There are famous people. Philander Prescott is buried there. He was he was a victim in the 1862 U.S.-Dakota War. Mm-hmm. He's probably the most famous resident of Pioneer Soldiers. But Colonel Cheatham, the first black fire chief in Minneapolis, is buried there. So we tell Mr. Cheatham's story. There's some prominent people there too.
Let's talk a little bit about what is coming up here, and I believe this is coming up here on the 14th, which is Monday. Is that this coming Monday?
It is Monday. It's Indigenous Peoples Day, formerly known or sometimes known as Columbus Day, but these days we call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
Because we're smarter. Because we're smarter about this. We can put Columbus on the shelf at this point. I agree with you wholeheartedly. You guys, it's a water blessing over at Bassett Creek, which, by the way, I love this. I love the idea of this because personally, frankly, I could go for more Native American water blessings around the state because they've been right about water the entire time. And we need to be listening to what the Native Americans are saying about water and quality and making sure it stays clean.
This is what's really cool about this project. We call it the Hahawakbadan water blessing. We were the beneficiaries a couple of years ago of Valley Community Presbyterian Church, did a land acknowledgement. Their church is in Golden Valley right on the creek. And they wanted to do something more than just a land acknowledgement. So they got a grant and collected oral histories of American Indians in suburbia. Thinking, wow, people don't usually hear about this. There's a native scholar at UW-Wisconsin or UW-Madison who this is her main area of focus. So they collected these oral histories, but they needed a place to put them, contacted us, and we said we'd love to be the repository for these oral histories, but we don't want to just store them away and hope somebody finds them. Let's activate this with some programming. Mm-hmm. So we started doing bits and pieces here, like what sort of programs can we do? We didn't have an agenda other than we want some of these stories to come out. So we had cultural advisors helping with the project, and one of the cultural advisors last year said, could you guys help us with a water blessing? We want to bring this story forward about the proper way to take care of water. And we said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the reason, as you know, Matt, this is the reason why I like to do history is it's meaningful in people's lives. So why do we call it Hahawakbadan instead of Bassett Creek? Because that's what the Dakota people called this waterway. And it's related to Hahawakba, which is the river of the falls. Bassett Creek goes into the Mississippi River. So Wakbadan is a creek or the mini river going into the bigger river, Wakpa. So we want to get that story out, but we also want to say, we want to answer the so what question. So what? Great. There was another name for it. Well, there's another name for it. There's another way to live alongside this creek and think about what it means in your life. And so we do things like this water blessing to get that story out there and have people think about place and connect to place in a new way.
And it is because, what I love about this is doing this in the suburbs, because these creeks, these rivers, and you can pick any one of them, they used to be major lifebloods of the Native American peoples with their communities, their farming, whatever, where they would settle at every time during the year. And even we know the Mississippi, we know the big river, but all these creeks there, they used to be much more sustaining, and now they're just something we occasionally have a park that goes past, and a lot of them have been diverted and challenged, and they've got runoff and all these things on them. And I think that making us understand that the Native Americans, these were the lifeblood of the communities, that they were able to survive because of these creeks and because of the food that they got out of the creek, that the creek helped create. I think helping us understand that, it just takes it away from being just a pretty little place in a park and makes it understand that this is something that we need to value. Yeah,
and it helps you think twice about what does it mean that this creek goes through two golf courses, and are these golf courses being good neighbors to the water? What does it mean that the creek is buried under literally 15 feet of concrete as it goes through downtown Minneapolis underneath Target Field? Let's think about that, and let's imagine different ways of thinking about it. To your point about lifebloods, Tara Perrin is a Dakota and Anishinaabe woman who will be doing the blessing. She's also doing Dakota plant walks for us. She did 2 this fall. She's going to do some more next spring, where she actually talks about, we walk through a park, and she says, here's this plant. This is what it's used for. This is the medicine in this plant. Here's the medicine in this plant. This is how my family keeps itself healthy, and encourages other people to consider doing the same.
Well, can I bring up something that's interesting? I was out at Yosemite early this year, and in Yosemite, that is something that they are trying to come to grips with, is that they ripped out all the native plants and got rid of them, and they brought in all these, the European influence on the plants. And that they brought Native Americans from that region back into the community, and they said, what did you do with all the plants? All the plants that we used to live and survive off of, they're all gone. And they are trying now, at least in parts of the park, to reintroduce the native original plants to get it back how it is. And once again, I think this is knowledge we have lost, and sadly we have lost, that the Native Americans have, and it's not lost to them. Bringing that back and showing us what survival was, what life was like, and how there's an abundance of all this all around us, I think is wonderful.
And what life is, Tara actively collects plants, but she's got to be careful about it. There have been legal cases, because on public lands, you can't just go take stuff. And so American Indians have filed suits with various government agencies to say, wait a minute, this is my cultural patrimony. You can't tell me I can't harvest. I'm going to harvest respectfully. I'm not going to over-harvest, but we got to do it carefully. The other thing is, the first project we did was in St. Paul. I'm not throwing shade on St. Paul parks, but it's an education process. She says, I don't do any collecting in St. Paul because they spray. And I can't be using sprayed with pesticide plants as medicine. So let's think about this, and let's think about, why do we need to spray? Probably to keep down the native plants and make some of the invasives work. I don't know. But in our mind, let's bring this history forward. Let's get people talking and thinking in new ways.
So let's talk about the ceremony, and I want to make sure I mention one thing here. Is while the ceremony is going on, no photography, no video recording. That's out of respect for the ceremony, but the ceremony is going to be happening on Monday. Where exactly at?
It's in Bassett Creek Park in Crystal.
Okay.
And it'll be at 10 o'clock Monday morning.
10 a.m. Monday morning. All righty. Lots of things going on. Obviously, we should make sure we mention the membership. People can easily become, there's a lot of things to go see over the Hennepin History Museum. You got things changing up all the time. Becoming a member is a great way to help support the museum and all the work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, and since we talked, Matt, it's been a minute, as they say. We launched a new membership program this spring where now a donation of any amount makes you a member of the museum and has you invested in what we're doing. So you give us $1, you give us $5, we'll call you a member, and we'll give you access to certain events and things like that. Of course, we prefer, if you're able, to give us $75, and then you can get our magazine, you can get access to more things. But yeah, we are encouraging anyone and everyone who are interested in the work we're doing to join in and help us keep it going.
As a person who is a $75 member of the Hennepin History Museum, I encourage you to do it. The magazine alone is 100% worth it. It is an absolutely fantastic magazine. Plus, it is a great little museum there in Minneapolis doing a lot of things that the other museums are not doing, which I think is incredibly important, like the water blessing ceremony, as well as also just some of the fun things that you're doing, whether it's with the puppets or with the cemeteries. Lots going on over there. Hennepin History Museum, once again, where is it located at if someone wants to stop on in?
2303 3rd Avenue South, half a block away from Minneapolis Institute of Art.
And I'll link to all the social media pages a little bit later on. John Crippen, the executive director over there. John, as always, great to chat with you. Good to see you again, my friend. And
good to see you too. Let's do this more often.
We'll have you back before too long. John Crippen, kind enough to join us. We'll take a break. Come on back. It's the Matt McNeil Show here on your Wednesday.